On this episode of ResiWeek, Control 4 acquires ihiji, every device with a microprocessor is vulnerable, and Monster has to pay Beats legal fees. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 101, Throw Everything Out.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Extron Electronics and by Peerless AV, the official outdoor display provider of Daytona International Speedway.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Jeremy Glowacki. He is the Managing Director of Content for Residential Systems and an avid Georgia fan. So
That's
he's
right.
excited about today.
I'm very excited, and hopefully by the time everyone's listening to this, we'll have really good news for Georgia fans like myself.
Like that you showed up to a national championship game?
No, that
No, they won.
they
Won.
the national
Go
championship
Dogs.
game. And I sat comfortably in my home theater watching it.
Very nice.
And I could turn it off if things got bad.
Sounds like a true fan.
Very confident fan, yeah.
Last but not least, we have Tim Albright. He is the founder of AVNation.tv, this whole little network right here, and also a Dogs fan.
Indeed.
I am not a
Second.
I am not a Dogs fan. I am an anti-Alabama fan.
That
Anyone
works
but
too,
Alabama.
you know,
I know.
that-
I know.
So Tim, I didn't get the story about how you became a Dogs fan. I attended the university and then graduated from the university. What's your connection? Or do you just like?
I just like the Dogs. No, my brother-in-law and is a huge Dogs fan. His brother attended University of Georgia with a medical degree. He's a dentist now down in Atlanta right now. And I like the program. I like the Under Mark Rich. My nephew is a huge Dogs fan, and so yeah, we've just kind of grown up. And once, actually, I'm in St. Louis. Once Mizzou joined the SEC, now every other year we get to see UGA playing at least somewhat locally over in Columbia.
Cool.
And usually see them beat Mizzou.
Usually, yeah.
Usually.
Year before last, it was quite dramatic actually in last minute. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
We're pretty high on that one. I remember.
I'm totally pulling for Fromm, so that makes me happy. But let's jump right in to our first story from Residential Systems. If you missed this, you were under a rock. Control 4 acquired ihiji, combining the two network device brands. What makes this exciting is, one, this is great news for Mike and his whole team there. They've had a stellar product for quite a long time, and this is a really nice, not only kind of validation of what they're doing, but also just great for that product and what they're going to be able to do. Now, a couple of the very interesting things is this is going to combine BakPak, which Control 4 got when they acquired PakEdge, because that was their network monitoring solution, and Envision from ihiji, which is going to give them one unified service platform. Now, obviously, having this is going to be a big boost for Control 4 dealers. But the other thing that I think is not it doesn't overshadow the acquisition of ihiji by Control 4, but the fact that they are now making this, they've taken away the monthly contract for this. You buy the device, you get a lifetime license, and you're off to the races. I think personally that is the biggest part of this beyond obviously the purchase. Jeremy, beyond what this will do for ihiji with marketing dollars as well as development dollars and R&D dollars, what does this do for that platform going forward?
Well, I mean, I think that as great of an idea that as ihiji has been all along with its Envision technology, there's been some maybe reluctance or inability to implement it widespread across the industry. I think that some of that has been companies unable to figure out how to set up RMR programs, recurring revenue, not really used to selling those types of contracts to their clients. I've heard numerous times that it sounds like a great idea, it sounds like something we really want to do, but we just really don't know how to put that into our proposals, manage it. Our clients are going to push back. Some of it's just assuming they will as opposed to diving in and doing it. I think this is going to be a great opportunity. I don't know from a technology standpoint what they're looking to do with this money besides the marketing, but I do think it's just going to give them more credibility with the Control4 connection. From the Control4 side, obviously, it gives them access to service to other devices that are not Control4 devices. So that's a huge win for Control4 for what they offer their dealers. But I just think it's going to add just further credibility and opportunity to really push out the message on this, and taking away the fee. I think will be one less hurdle for dealers to implement this technology.
Tim, when we look at how that landscape has changed, the RMR landscape, the remote monitoring landscape, the last little bit, it's changed fairly significantly. And Jeremy brought up a really good point that dealers have a hard time selling RMR and RMR services, even though, all you have to do is put a, remote access device in, and you realize how effective it is and how good it is for your business, not only how effective it is and how helpful it can be to your clients. Does this because they took away the monthly fees, does this, I don't want to say, does this spell the end of us continuing to push RMR, but does this make it one of those things where you sell your device, you sell it at your retail cost, and you give them 1 year of service, and then after that you try and push them, rather than trying to sell the device, push RMR, and go through that whole gamut? It seems to me that the majority of the manufacturers are pulling away from monthly fees.
Just because Control4 has taken away the monthly fee doesn't mean you have to as an integrator. There is still costs associated with monitoring your client's system. There's still costs associated with coming out and fixing it or fixing it remotely. There's still a time and sometimes a truck roll cost to that. So just because the manufacturer, the wholesaler of this, is taking away the monthly fee does not mean inherently that you have to. That's between you and your business structure and your business partners and your clients, really. You look at folks like ADT and any sort of security system, not to pick on ADT, but a security system, there's a monthly fee to that because someone is monitoring it, right? Mm-hmm. There should be probably a monthly fee to their AV system, and maybe it depends on how you roll it out and how your packages are put together. That fee can be applied to making sure that their systems are up and running, making sure that the firmware is updated, making sure that the system is operating properly. What that fee is obviously is up to you, and making sure that is profitable for you to do that. But just because the manufacturer is taking away a monthly fee doesn't necessarily inherently mean that you have to reduce that or eliminate that completely.
So one more question for you guys. When I went through the comments when this story broke on social media, on Twitter and on Facebook, one of the biggest things I saw was that by them taking away the monthly fee, they essentially quasi-increased the price a little bit. And I don't know what the dealer price on these devices were, so I don't know how accurate that was. But there was a lot of conversation about this is now too expensive to put into a smaller install. Is that something that we're continuing to see, where we can sell these kind of devices, this kind of service on, whether it be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 projects, but we can't sell it on maybe a $5,000 to $10,000 system? Is there any major issue with that, or is that just the way it's got to be?
I don't know about the pricing, to be honest, but I think that from my experience with Control 4, their goal is to simplify the process as much as possible for dealers. And when it comes to service, they really, I mean, when they acquired PackEdge, part of that was to tighten up the network because they knew the backbone of their control systems was dependent on the network quality and the ability to service the network. And of course, with BakPak, they could service part of the network, you know, not all of the third-party devices. So that's why this becomes a good opportunity for them, or a good decision for them to acquire ihiji. But I think that perhaps pricing would be an issue for the smaller systems. It would limit, you know, if it's a high percentage of the budget, you're going to have some pushback there, unless you roll it in. You know, it's all about not showing what those line items cost in the budget. You know, somehow make that work out so that the budget is incorporating that. But I do think that could be a challenge for those smaller systems, and you need them to work and to be maintained as well as the larger ones. I mean, there aren't as many pieces that can break, but it's still, all it takes is one piece of the puzzle there to cause the whole system to not work.
And that would actually take a slightly, not contrary point, but I would say that goes back to your question to me about whether or not this means that we have to get rid of RMR. If you have a service agreement with that client, then yeah, you put it in, right? You roll that and you figure that into the cost of whatever that monthly fee is to them, but you roll that in. Yes, there might be a slight increase to the base price to you, but you adjust your monthly fee to them based on that overall cost to you.
Yeah. I just find it interesting because I know that specifically even with our clients, it seems that our clients with larger systems, they may have the same number of problems, but they usually seem to be slightly more understanding than a lot of our clients that have smaller systems. They're the ones that are going to go crazy over something that, you know, when something happens, when something breaks.
It seems like I can relate to obviously the smaller than the bigger because of my income bracket probably. But when you invest in something and it's a big item to you,
exactly,
then obviously you're a lot more demanding. That makes sense that they would tend to be like that, I guess, because
it's a larger part of their disposable income, we'll say.
Sure.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on from that story to another story that kind of shook the data world, if you will. The security of pretty much every computer on the planet just got a whole lot worse. This comes to us from CNN. Essentially, what has happened, the short form is researchers announced last Wednesday that a series of major vulnerabilities in microprocessors have been discovered. They're called Spectre and Meltdown, and they operate by manipulating different ways processors optimize performance by rearranging the order of instructions or performing different instructions in parallel, i.e., if a attacker gets control of one process on a system, they can use that to access data anywhere else on the system. Now, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and essentially we're all scared of this. Is the very short, easy way to say it. I have not heard anyone say, oh, this is not a big deal, because it's literally every device, every phone, every tablet, every computer, anything that has a microprocessor essentially at the moment is considered to be vulnerable. The biggest concern I have when I'm looking at this and talking about it is the suggested fix is to throw it out, wait 3 years till they can fix this problem and buy a new one. And as much as I'd love a brand new MacBook Pro in 3 years, I don't like going through the next 3 years either without it because I threw it in the garbage, or being concerned that it's completely vulnerable to stuff and hacking and all that bad stuff. Tim, let's start with you on this. Outside of this scaring you to death, what do we do with this? What do we tell our clients about this who are going to ask us, even though we may not be their computer salesmen? We're their technology specialists. We're their digital concierge, to steal a line from Rich Fregosa. they're going to ask you about this because, let's be honest, it's not just on ResiSys or CE Pro. It's on stinking CNN. What do we do?
You throw everything out and you start over in some No, it's interesting. I had a conversation with my dad, who is 67 at this point, about this story, and he asked me the same question. He was like, "What do I do?" You watch and you wait, unfortunately, for the manufacturers to come up with fixes. They are coming out slowly. Apple released a fix for Safari.
Yep.
And they are coming out with a fix for both OS and Mac OS shortly, quote unquote, shortly. What shortly means, I have no idea. But the bigger issue, and I shouldn't say bigger issue, another issue that I am carefully watching, and I've got some calls out to some folks to see if this is an issue or not, is whether or not this impacts any control systems. Because one of the things that the AV and the IT convergence and all that stuff in AV over IT that we all have come to enjoy and depend on, is whether or not those processors, because let's be frank, control processors have processors in them, and if those are affected as well, because if they are, then the folks that make those control systems are going to have to come up with patches and fixes as well, until such a time that the chip manufacturers can come out with a redesigned chip, which is why it's going to take 3 years to redesign the chip and start creating the silicon, because somebody that knows more about this than I ever will told me that yes, you can design a chip and yes, you can roll it out, but the first 2 or 3 batches go in the garbage because they're not any good, because you find issues and you find things to fix. And so once it does get designed and they do start rolling it off the line, you're still looking at about 3 or 4 months before you ever see a chip in any computer. So you wait for the manufacturers, you wait for the software companies to come out with software fixes in the interim. But yeah, in 3 years, there'll be a glut of new computers, both from Mac and PC.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, considering that most control systems are running on something, and even if we go beyond control systems and just start looking at networking and routers and everything else, how do you put faith in your clients? How do you instill faith into them that you're doing everything you can as their integrator to keep them safe when something like this comes down and it's every device, toss it?
Yeah, I mean, this, like Tim said, it goes beyond our industry. It's everyone has a smartphone, and even if you don't have a PC, you've got a computer in your pocket. I mean, this is about that as well. So I don't think anyone's going to point to the industry that we talk about, that we're a part of, and say, it's all your fault, because this is much bigger than the smart home and into these integrated systems. I think one of the things the article said was, for the average user, for the average consumer, you kind of have to just still be smart about what you do, not opening suspicious emails and that sort of thing. So I think one of the things you do is you tell the basics again to your clients and say, be smart here. Don't fall for these nonsense emails. Try to avoid phishing attacks and attachments that aren't something you're expecting. Because generally it's not going to hit you. It's these cloud services that are a problem. And this has been around for 15 to 20 years, they say, which is what the crazy thing is. I almost feel like it's so big that you can't even process what it is. It's like the saber rattling between North Korea and the current administration. It's like it gets to a point where you can't even process it. It's just too scary to even think about. So you have to just move on with your life. This is something that's been there. We just now know about it. It's going to take some time for them to fix it. If we sort of keep, on our normal track of being smart about what we do as consumers, we shouldn't be affected by it, I hope. it is a scary thing just because it's so big, and you think to throw out devices recommendation kind of startles you. But I think generally speaking, what is going to happen is, we're hopefully going to have just smarter consumers, more informed consumers, and our industry being a part of that evangelism to get the word out to say, there are more vulnerabilities than we realize. Just keep doing the things we keep telling you to do and avoid issues,
Very good. Get back to basics and all that fun stuff. Let's go to our last article of the day. This comes to us from strategy.com and Ted Green. Monster. All right, give me 1 second. Monster and Noli must pay Beats nearly $8 million in legal fees over the Christmas break. The judge in this case handed down a decision from the jury that essentially Monster and Noli need to cover the legal fees of Beats and, kind of case in point, Apple for their lawsuits back and forth over the patent infringement, etc. Jeremy, I want to start with you on this one. This has been one of those. There seems to be a lot of legal cases right now between a lot of manufacturers back and forth, but in this case specifically, because it was kind of one of our industry people going out and fighting what became the behemoth of Beats and Apple. Does stuff like this have any effect on the end user at all? Do they care about this kind of stuff?
Well, obviously, Monster's been through a lot with this case, and this was one of the worst things that has happened to that company. It went from their most successful story to their biggest defeat, because of the legal wrangling between those two brands. I don't know if you saw the documentary with Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre that I believe is on HBO. They actually mentioned Monster, which I thought was stunning, that they gave them any recognition whatsoever after everything that's happened, because there's so much bad blood there, according to, stories that you've read and things you've heard over the years. And honestly, Monster had a bit of a reputation even before all of this for defending its name, I guess, out there. And there are a lot of frivolous lawsuits involving the Monster name, including, Monster is a pretty broad name for things. There's Monster Energy Drink and Monster.com and things that they went after. But then there was like the Monster Mini Golf, family-owned miniature golf place that got sued by them. And it was a really, it was a bad image thing for them early on. And I just think that they've been pretty ruthless in the way they do business, and they found someone that was a lot more cutthroat than them. In the end, I don't know how big the Monster name is with the general consumer anymore. I think that once HDMI cables stop being this high-priced magical thing that people thought they needed to buy at retail, they've kind of faded, I think, in my estimation. Their headphones aren't quite at, they can't compete with the Beats and some of the other brands. But they're still sponsoring the Iggy Azalea concert at CES this week.
Woo-hoo.
So they apparently have some money to spend, although I'm sure that Iggy...
Not anymore.
I'm sure Iggy would take any deal that she could get to perform these days. So
what Jeremy's saying is he's not an Iggy fan.
No,
now we know.
She had her moment.
Tim, does Monster really have any place in the industry anymore? Like, I don't want to say that this is the end of Monster, but it's been years since we've been asked for Monster, if we carry Monster. The last, outside of this court case, the last time Monster's popped in my head is the odd time we find a outrageously overpriced power bar that we rip out of someone's house.
Well,
like
Now, here's the thing. So asking that is almost akin to asking a couple of years ago, because I was guilty of this, asking whether or not Sony had a place. Now, I'm not equating Sony to Monster. Don't misunderstand here, because Sony is...
Sounds like you are.
Okay, so a little bit. Monster has a long history. Smart folks that are really good at marketing, and they're pretty good at when it comes to electronics. Is there, are there HDMI cables worth what they charge? To me personally, no. However, the fact that they continue to sell them at Best Buy would say that there is still a market for those, right? Folks will still buy them. Now, do they have a place in the consumer or in the residential for folks like you and Joe Whitaker and Richard Vergoza to put in? Probably not. But to say that they're completely out of the AV industry, I think is probably a little bit short-sighted, because again, there's going to be clients that will go out and go, oh, you know what? I just need a cable real quick. I'm going to pop here, or I'm going to go on Amazon and buy a couple.
That's the whole premise of my conversation, though.
Yeah.
Or of my question is, are they out of our industry? Not can they be purchased at Best Buy or on Amazon?
Then the answer is yes. They are
done?
They are out of at least from the consumer standpoint. There may be some residential dealers whose clients ask for them, but I have yet to run into. Let me make sure that I'm saying this correctly. I have yet to run into any commercial AV systems where somebody has asked for those specifically, or they've been on a spec.
That would be adorable. That's the spec I want to see.
I don't want to see that.
Is
probably
a full
written by
commercial
Josh
spec.
Trago.
This has to have Monster on it. I don't care what everything else is. Crestron or AMX. I don't care about Control as long as it has Monster. Oh, I feel like we're just beating up on Monster. All right, gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this episode. Jeremy, obviously you are not at CES, so people can't follow you there. But where can they connect with you?
Well, excuse me, I almost made it through without coughing or clearing my throat. On Twitter at ResiSys, and via email at jigglewalkie@nbmedia.com, or via the website residentialsystems.com.
Very good. Thanks for being here, Tim. Now that you're back from vacay, where can people find you?
You can find me on the website, or I guess you can follow me on Twitter as I'm bemoaning the Bears season or cheering on the Georgia Bulldogs.
Weren't you done
I was done in week
preseason?
2, technically. I thought
it was
we had
preseason.
week 2. Once they got Trubisky, there was a slight hint of hope when they put in the rookie.
I
but
hope they don't kill Mitch.
TD Albright, Tim David Albright on the Twitters.
Very good. For myself, if you'd like to follow me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv. You'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows. When you visit the website, please take a second to check out our underwriters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out and support them as well. Thank you for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.